Where the stars end, humanity begins and the galaxy trembles. The galaxy thought it had no mysteries left. Every star mapped, every world cataloged, until they reached the edge. Where the charts ended, humanity began, and in that uncharted darkness, the galaxy found something far more terrifying than the unknown. It found us. The discovery of the Void Commander, Sarah Chen, floated in the observation deck of the exploration vessel Pioneer, her fingers dancing across holographic star charts that filled the room with soft blue light. She had been mapping this sector of space for 3 months, cataloging every asteroid, every gravitational anomaly, every whisper of cosmic radiation. But something was wrong with the data she was receiving from the Galactic Coalition's central database. The star charts showed a perfect sphere of nothingness, exactly where human space should be. Not empty space, but a complete absence of data, as if someone had taken scissors to the fabric of the map itself. Every other civilization in the known galaxy was meticulously documented. The insectoid Vec Confederacy with their hive worlds spinning in perfect mathematical precision, the crystalline luminous beings who lived in the coronas of stars, the ancient preservers who claimed to have witnessed the birth of the galaxy itself. Every species, every empire, every minor trading post was marked and cataloged, except for humans. Sarah pulled up another database, this one from the Merchants Guild. Same result. A blank sphere roughly 300 light-years in diameter, with Earth at its center. She tried the Scientific Concordance, the Military Strategic Alliance, even the underground information brokers network she wasn't supposed to have access to. Every single one showed the same deliberate emptiness. Her communication panel chimed. Lieutenant Marcus Webb appeared on the screen, his dark face creased with concern. "Commander, you need to see this. We've intercepted a transmission from a Coalition Council meeting. It's encrypted, but our AI managed to crack it." Sarah's eyebrows rose. The Coalition never held emergency sessions unless something catastrophic was happening. "Put it through." The main display shifted to show the Great Council chamber on Nexus Prime. 12 different species sat around a crystalline table that adjusted its shape to accommodate each representative's unique physiology. The Vec delegate's compound eyes glittered with anxiety. The luminous representative pulsed in agitated patterns of light. But it was the ancient preserver who commanded attention, its withered form seeming to carry the weight of eons. "The human reconnaissance probe has been detected near the Sagittarius arm." The preserver's voice echoed like grinding stone. "They are mapping beyond their designated boundaries again." The Vec delegate clicked its mandibles nervously. Perhaps it is time we told them the truth. The deception cannot hold forever. The luminous flared bright red. Tell them. Tell them that we have deliberately hidden their true nature from them. Tell them that every star chart they receive is edited. Tell them that we fear them more than any threat the galaxy has ever known. They are children playing with matches in a powder store, the preserver said slowly. They do not remember what they are capable of. That is the only reason the galaxy still exists. Sarah paused the recording, her heart pounding. She turned to Marcus on the communication screen. "Get me everything we have on pre-contact Earth history. Everything from before we joined the galactic community." Marcus nodded and disappeared from view. Sarah turned back to the frozen image of the council meeting. What were they so afraid of? Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, having only achieved faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. They were technologically inferior to most coalition species. Their ships were slower, their weapons weaker, their territories smaller. So why did the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy speak of humanity with such fear? A proximity alarm shattered her thoughts. Something was approaching the Pioneer at impossible speeds. Sarah rushed to the command deck where her crew was already at battle stations. The object on their sensors was unlike anything in their databases. It was perfectly spherical, about the size of a shuttle, and it was decelerating from near light speed without any visible propulsion system. "It's sending a signal," the communications officer reported, "but it's not using any known frequency or encoding. Wait, the ship's AI is translating. It's in ancient Earth languages. Multiple ones simultaneously. Put it through the speakers," Sarah ordered. The bridge filled with a cacophony of voices speaking in unison. Latin, Sanskrit, ancient Chinese, languages that had been dead for millennia. But underneath them all, Sarah could hear a single message being repeated. "Do not seek the truth. Do not wake the sleepers. Do not remember what you were. The sphere had come to a complete stop exactly 1 kilometer from the Pioneer. Sarah studied it on the tactical display. Whatever it was made of, their sensors couldn't penetrate its surface. It just hung there in space, a perfect mirror that reflected the stars around it. "Captain." Marcus's voice came over the comm, urgent and confused. "I've been going through our historical databases. There's something wrong with them. Everything before the year 2157 is corrupted or missing, but I found something else, hidden in the quantum substrate of the data storage. It's like someone wrote information directly into the quantum foam itself." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Quantum substrate storage was theoretically impossible with current technology. "What does it say?" "Its coordinates," Marcus replied. "A location in the Sol system, Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, and a single word: remember." The sphere outside suddenly projected a hologram directly onto their bridge. It showed a star map, but not like any they had seen before. This one showed human space as it really was, filled with thousands of planets, millions of installations, trade routes that connected to every corner of the galaxy. And at the center of it all, Earth glowed with a light that hurt to look at directly. But that wasn't what made Sarah's blood freeze. It was the date stamp on the map. According to the hologram, this was human space 50,000 years ago, before any known galactic civilization except the Preservers, before humanity was supposed to have even developed agriculture. The sphere's transmission changed, and now a single voice spoke in modern English: Commander Sarah Chen of the Pioneer. "You have been chosen to receive this warning. The Coalition fears humanity because they know what your species once was, and what you chose to forget. 50,000 years ago, humanity ruled the galaxy not through force but through something far more dangerous. You possessed the ability to reshape reality itself through pure creative will." Sarah gripped the arms of her command chair. "That's impossible. Humans can't manipulate reality." "Not anymore," the voice continued. "Your ancestors voluntarily sealed that ability away, locked it in your genetic code behind barriers of forgetfulness. They did this because they discovered that unlimited creative power in the hands of billions of individuals would eventually tear the universe apart. So they chose to forget, to become ordinary, to spare the galaxy from their potential." "Why tell us this now?" Sarah asked. "Because the seals are breaking. Humans across the galaxy are beginning to dream again. They're having visions of cities that float in void, of gardens that grow in the hearts of stars, of symphonies that can reshape matter. The creative force that your species locked away is awakening, and when it does, the galaxy will face a choice. Embrace the chaos of unlimited possibility, or try to destroy humanity before you remember how to be gods." The sphere began to pulse with a warm, golden light. "Commander Chen, in the archive beneath Europa's ice, your ancestors left instructions. A choice for your generation to make. You can reinforce the seals and remain as you are, limited but safe. Or you can unlock humanity's true potential and risk everything." Before Sarah could respond, the sphere collapsed in on itself and vanished, leaving only empty space and a crew full of questions. But Sarah's mind was already made up. She turned to her navigation officer. "Set course for Jupiter system, maximum speed. It's time we learned what humanity really is." The archive beneath Europa. The Pioneer descended through Europa's thin atmosphere, its hull groaning against the intense radiation from Jupiter's magnetosphere. Below them stretched an endless expanse of ice, cracked and ridged like frozen waves. Sarah stood on the bridge, watching their descent while her mind raced through the implications of what they'd learned. Marcus had discovered more hidden data fragments during their journey to Jupiter. Each one painted a picture of a humanity that seemed impossible. Cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, humans who could survive in the vacuum of space through will alone, technologies that weren't built but rather dreamed into existence. It all sounded like mythology, yet the quantum signatures on the data were authentic. The coordinates led them to a seemingly unremarkable patch of ice near Europa's equator. Their scanners showed nothing but solid ice for kilometers down, but as they approached, something extraordinary happened. The ice began to glow from within, patterns of light racing through the frozen water like neural pathways. "It's responding to our presence," the science officer reported. "Specifically, to human biosignatures. The ice is some kind of recognition system." Sarah watched as a perfect circle of ice simply vanished, revealing a shaft that descended into darkness. The edges were smooth as glass, and a soft blue light emanated from somewhere far below, She made a decision that would have seemed insane just days ago. I'm going down there. Marcus, you have the bridge. Marcus started to protest, but Sarah was already heading to the equipment bay. She suited up in their most advanced environmental suit, though something told her she wouldn't need it. As the shuttle descended into the shaft, her suit's readings became increasingly erratic. The temperature was simultaneously absolute zero and perfectly comfortable. Gravity fluctuated between nothing and several times Earth normal. Yet Sarah felt none of it. It was as if the environment was adjusting itself to keep her safe. The shaft opened into a vast chamber that couldn't possibly exist. According to her instruments, she had descended only 3 kilometers, but the space around her stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. The walls were covered in symbols that shifted and changed as she watched, writing themselves in languages that evolved from ancient to modern as her eyes tracked across them. Welcome, descendant, a voice spoke directly into her mind, not through her suit's communications, but into her consciousness itself. I am Aegis, the Archive Guardian. I have waited 50,000 years for humanity to be ready for this knowledge. A figure materialized before her, translucent and shifting. Sometimes it appeared human. Sometimes it was pure geometric patterns. Sometimes it was something her mind couldn't quite process. Aegis was not just an artificial intelligence. It was something far more complex. Sarah found her voice. What is this place? This is one of 12 archives, Aegis replied, gesturing to the vast space around them. When your ancestors chose the Great Forgetting, they knew that someday humanity might need to remember, so they built these archives to preserve not just knowledge, but the very essence of what humanity was. The air shimmered, and Sarah found herself standing in a garden that couldn't exist. Plants made of living light grew beside trees that sang in harmonious frequencies. Water flowed upward in spirals that formed complex mathematical equations, and walking through this impossible paradise were humans, but not like any she had ever seen. Their eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. When they moved, reality rippled around them like water. These were your ancestors, Aegis explained, humans who had unlocked the full potential of consciousness. They discovered that the human mind, when fully awakened, could interface directly with the quantum substrate of reality. Imagination became a force as real as gravity. Dreams could reshape matter. Stories could birth universes. Sarah watched one of the ancient humans painting in the air, each brushstroke creating actual stars that began their stellar evolution and fast forward. But if they had such power, why give it up? Aegis's form darkened. Because they discovered that consciousness and creativity, when unlimited, are inherently chaotic. Watch. The scene changed. Now Sarah stood in space itself, protected by some invisible force. She watched as hundreds of human ships, each one unique and impossible, tried to terraform a dead world. But their visions conflicted. One group wanted an ocean world, another a desert planet, a third tried to transform it into a living organism. Reality began to tear at the seams where these creative forces met. The planet didn't just die. It ceased to have ever existed, creating a paradox that rippled backward and forward through time. The more humans embraced their power, the more reality became unstable, Aegis continued. Wars were fought not with weapons but with competing narratives, each side trying to imagine the other out of existence. Children's nightmares became real. Dreams spawned monsters. The boundary between thought and reality disappeared entirely. The scene shifted again. Now Sarah saw a great council, millions of humans linked in a vast mental network. Their combined will held reality together, even as individual creativity threatened to tear it apart. She could feel their exhaustion, their sorrow, their terrible decision forming. So they chose to forget, Sarah whispered. Not just forget, Aegis corrected. They rewrote their own genetic code, placing limiters on human consciousness. They scattered themselves to the edges of the galaxy, destroyed their technologies, and created false histories. They even seeded the galaxy with other species, uplifting them to sentence so that humanity would not be alone when they awoke as a lesser species. Sarah's mind reeled. The Vec, the Luminos, the others, they're our creations. Your children, in a sense. Aegis showed her images of early humans carefully guiding evolution on 100 worlds. Each species was given gifts but also limitations. None were allowed the dangerous combination of creativity and quantum consciousness that humans possessed. It was hoped they would become the galaxy's new caretakers while humanity slept. But they remembered, Sarah said. The Coalition knows what we were. The Preservers remembered. Aegis confirmed. They were the only species already sentient when humanity ruled the galaxy. They watched your rise and fall, and they've been watching ever since. When humans began to explore space again, the Preservers convinced the other species to hide the truth. They fear what would happen if humanity remembered its power. Sarah felt something stirring in her mind. Since entering the archive, she had begun to see things differently. The symbols on the walls weren't just writing, they were possibilities waiting to be realized. The impossible garden wasn't a hologram. It was a space where imagination had overruled physics, and she could feel, deep in her genetic code, locks beginning to strain. "The seals are breaking, aren't they?" she asked. Aegis nodded. "Humanity's creative force cannot be contained forever. Across human space, people are beginning to dream true dreams again. Artists are painting things into existence. Writers are discovering their stories are coming true. Scientists are solving problems not through calculation, but through pure intuitive leaps that reshape reality to match their theories. What you need to understand," Aegis continued, "is that this is not evolution or ascension in the traditional sense. Humanity isn't becoming something new. You're remembering what you always were. The universe itself might be nothing more than a story that consciousness tells itself. And humans are the only species that can hear the narrative clearly enough to edit it." Sarah suddenly understood why the Coalition feared them. It wasn't about technology or military might. It was about the fundamental nature of reality itself. If humans could reshape existence through will and imagination, then every other species existed at humanity's sufferance. They could be written out of the story. The Awakening Protocol. Sarah emerged from the archive 3 days later, though for her it had felt like years. Aegis had shown her wonders and horrors in equal measure. The complete history of humanity's first rise, their golden age when they painted galaxies into being, and the catastrophic wars that nearly unraveled existence itself. But more importantly, she now carried within her mind the Awakening Protocol, the key to unlocking humanity's sealed potential. The Pioneer's crew barely recognized her when she returned. Her eyes held depths that hadn't been there before, and reality seemed to shimmer slightly around her as if uncertain of its own stability. Marcus was the first to speak. "Commander, while you were gone, we've been monitoring Coalition communications. They know we're here. A fleet is already on its way." Sarah nodded calmly. She had expected this. The moment they accessed the archive, it would have sent ripples through the quantum substrate that any sufficiently advanced civilization could detect. "How long do we have?" 12 hours, maybe less. "Sarah, what did you find down there?" Instead of answering directly, Sarah walked to the bridge's main display. She placed her hand on the console, and without touching any controls, images began to appear. The crew gasped as they saw the true history of humanity unfold before them. Cities that existed in 7 dimensions. Humans who had become living stories, existing as narratives that could rewrite themselves. The birth of entire species, crafted like gardeners tending to life itself. "This is what we were," Sarah said softly, "and it's what we're becoming again. The genetic locks our ancestors placed are failing. Across human space, people are beginning to manifest abilities that shouldn't be possible. The Coalition knows this, and they're terrified." Lieutenant Eva Petrov, the ship's medical officer, was scanning Sarah with a handheld device. "Commander, your neural activity is off the charts. Your brain is forming connections that... This can't be right. It says you're using parts of your brain that don't exist in baseline humans." Sarah smiled. "They exist. They've always existed. We just forgot how to use them." She turned to face her crew. "Each of you needs to make a choice. The archive gave me something called the Awakening Protocol. I can share it with you, but once I do, there's no going back. You'll begin to remember what humans really are. You'll start to see reality not as fixed laws, but as suggestions that consciousness can negotiate with." "What's the alternative?" Marcus asked. "We run, we hide. We pretend we never found the archive and hope the Coalition doesn't decide to preemptively eliminate humanity before we fully awaken." The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then Eva stepped forward. "Show us. If this is humanity's birthright, we deserve to know." One by one, the crew agreed. Sarah closed her eyes and reached out with something that wasn't quite telepathy, but more like sharing a dream while awake. She touched each of their minds, and in that touch, she passed on not just knowledge but understanding. The locks in their genetic code recognized the protocol and began to dissolve. The transformation wasn't dramatic at first, but within minutes the crew began to change. Ava looked at her medical scanner and suddenly understood that illness was just a story the body told itself, one that could be rewritten. Marcus gazed at the star charts and saw not just positions but possibilities, paths through space that existed because consciousness believed they should. The navigator realized that distance was negotiable if you knew how to ask reality nicely. "Commander," the communications officer said, his voice trembling with awe, "I'm receiving transmissions from Earth, but they're not using our equipment. The messages are writing themselves directly into the quantum foam. Sarah, it's happening everywhere. Humans across the galaxy are awakening." Sarah activated the ship's long-range sensors, but she didn't need them. She could feel it now. A vast network of human consciousness spreading across space. Each awakening human was like a star igniting, and their combined light was beginning to reshape local reality. On Earth, physicists were discovering that their equations were becoming true simply by writing them. On Mars, an artist painted a forest and trees began to grow from the barren soil. On the colony world of New Eden, children's imaginary friends were becoming visible to everyone. But with the awakening came danger. Sarah could also feel the chaos beginning to build. Without guidance, without understanding of their power, humans were creating contradictions in reality. In one system, two groups of humans had different visions for their world's future, and their conflicting imaginings were causing space-time to fracture. "We need to reach Earth," Sarah decided. The archive mentioned a council of minds, a way for awakened humans to coordinate their consciousness without losing individuality. "If we don't establish some kind of order, we'll repeat the mistakes of our ancestors." "The Coalition fleet is almost here," Marcus warned. 17 ships, including a preserver dreadnought. "They're broadcasting demands for our surrender." Sarah felt no fear. Fear was just a story, and she was learning to tell better stories. Put them on screen. The main display showed Ambassador Kretak of the Vec Confederacy. His compound eyes reflected multiple angles of barely contained terror. "Humans of the Pioneer, by order of the Galactic Coalition, you will cease all reality manipulation immediately. Submit to containment protocols or face immediate termination." Sarah stood and faced the screen. Behind her, reality rippled as her crew began to unconsciously reshape the bridge to be more than it was. The metal walls became partially transparent, showing the cosmos beyond. The air itself sparkled with potential. "Ambassador Kretak, I respectfully decline. Humanity is awakening to its true nature, and no force in the galaxy can stop that now. But we don't want war. We don't want to dominate or destroy. We want to share what we've learned." Kretak's mandibles clicked in agitation. "You speak of sharing, but your ancestors nearly destroyed everything. Reality itself almost collapsed under the weight of human imagination." "Yes," Sarah agreed, "because they tried to be gods individually, each human reshaping reality to their own vision. But we can learn from their mistakes. We can find harmony between creativity and stability." To demonstrate, Sarah reached out with her consciousness and touched the space around the Coalition fleet. She didn't attack or threaten. Instead, she showed them a vision. She painted possibilities in the void, showing futures where humans and other species worked together, where the chaos of creativity was balanced by the wisdom of older races. She showed them gardens growing in dead space, stars being born from pure thought, diseases being cured by rewriting their stories. "This is what we offer," Sarah said. "Not domination, but partnership. Help us learn to control our nature, and we'll share the gifts of unlimited possibility." The Memory Wars. The Coalition fleet hung motionless in space, paralyzed not by force, but by indecision. Sarah could feel the fear radiating from every ship, but also something else. Wonder. Curiosity. The same emotions that had driven every species to reach for the stars. Then the preserver dreadnought moved forward. Its hull was ancient, covered in scripts from civilizations that had died before Earth's sun was born. When it spoke, the voice came not through communication systems but through the fabric of space itself. "Human Sarah Chen, I am Keeper Avalon, eldest of the preservers. I witnessed humanity's first rise and fall. I stood in the ruins of 17 star systems destroyed when human children played war with reality itself. I watched as your species chose amnesia over omnipotence. And now I watch as you awaken again." Sarah felt the weight of ages in that voice. Tell me, Keeper Avalon, why didn't you destroy us when we were vulnerable, when we had forgotten what we were? Because, Avalon replied, we hoped that if humanity rose again slowly, learned wisdom before power, you might become what the galaxy needs instead of what it fears. But the awakening comes too fast. Already, we detect reality storms forming in 12 systems where humans dream conflicting dreams. On the main screen, new data began flowing. The Coalition's sensors were far more advanced than the Pioneers, and they showed the truth of what was happening across human space. On the colony of Haven, two religious groups had different visions of paradise, and their competing heavens were overlapping, creating spatial paradoxes. On the industrial world of Forge, workers had dreamed away their factories, but without consensus on what should replace them, the planet's infrastructure was collapsing into uncertainty. You see? Kretak said, this is what we feared. Humans cannot control their power. You will tear the galaxy apart just as your ancestors nearly did. But even as he spoke, Sarah noticed something. The chaos wasn't spreading randomly. There was a pattern to it, a rhythm like a heartbeat. She closed her eyes and extended her consciousness further than she had before, touching not just nearby human minds but reaching across the entire network of awakening humanity. What she found amazed her. The chaos wasn't destruction. It was creation trying to happen without structure. Like a symphony where every musician played a different song, but underneath the discord she could hear something else. The beginning of harmony. Humans weren't just awakening to their power, they were awakening to each other. Marcus, she said, her eyes still closed. Can you feel it? Marcus nodded, his own consciousness expanding. It's like we're all neurons in a vast mind. But we're just learning how to form thoughts together. That's exactly what we are. Hedges's voice suddenly echoed through the bridge, though the entity itself wasn't present. The archive had prepared me to guide this moment. Humanity was never meant to be gods, plural. You were meant to be something singular and plural simultaneously, a collective consciousness that maintains individuality. Sarah opened her eyes and looked at the Coalition fleet. You want to contain us because you fear chaos. But what if we could show you order? Not the rigid order of laws and limitations, but the organic order of consensus and harmony. Before anyone could respond, space itself began to shift. Not violently, but like a gentle tide. Sarah reached out to every awakened human she could touch, sharing not commands but understanding. She showed them what she had learned in the archive, the danger of uncoordinated creation, the beauty of synchronized imagination. Across human space, the chaos began to calm. Not because humans stopped using their power, but because they began to use it together. On Haven, the two religious groups stopped trying to overwrite each other's paradises and instead began to blend them, creating something neither had imagined, but both found beautiful. On Forge, the workers reached a consensus, and their factories transformed into something that was both efficient and wonderful, structures that were as much art as industry. But then something unexpected happened. As humans began to synchronize their consciousness, they started to remember, not just individually but collectively. Memories that had been locked away for 50,000 years began to surface. Sarah gasped as the full history flooded through her. She saw humanity's first civilization, how they had discovered their power by accident when a group of humans had wished so hard for rain during a drought that they had rewritten local weather patterns. She saw their golden age, when they had created wonders beyond imagination. But she also saw the wars, the memory wars they had called them. When humans discovered they could alter not just reality but the past itself, competing factions had tried to rewrite history to ensure their ideology had always been dominant. The battles weren't fought with weapons but with competing narratives, each side trying to make their version of events the true one. Reality had become a palimpsest of contradicting histories, with cause and effect breaking down entirely. She saw how it had ended. A child, no more than 7 years old, had wished that the wars had never happened. And reality, exhausted from being constantly rewritten, had granted that wish. The wars ceased to have ever existed, but the paradox was so severe that it had created a cascade failure. Entire sectors of space had simply ceased, not destroyed but never having been. That was when humanity had chosen the great forgetting. They had realized that their power was too dangerous when wielded by individuals or factions, so they had performed one last great act of collective will. They had wished themselves ordinary, locked their power away and scattered to the edges of the galaxy to live as a young species just beginning to explore the stars. But the memories showed something else too. Before they forgot, humanity had left more than just the archives. They had woven into the fabric of reality itself a failsafe. If humanity ever awakened again, they would have one chance to get it right. One opportunity to become what they should have been from the start. Sarah shared this knowledge with the Coalition fleet, projecting the memories for all to see. "This is why you fear us," she said. "Not because of what we are, but because of what we failed to become. But we have a chance to do better now." "How?" Avalon asked. "How can you prevent the same mistakes? By not trying to be gods," Sarah replied. "By being something else. Something new." She reached out to the network of human consciousness again, but this time she didn't just touch their minds. She invited them to touch hers. One by one, then in groups, then in vast waves, humans began to link their consciousness, not losing themselves but becoming part of something greater. It was like watching a galaxy being born. Each human mind was a star, unique and brilliant, but together they formed structures of thought that no individual could achieve. Spiral arms of creativity, clusters of wisdom, nebulae of dreams. They weren't becoming a hive mind. They were becoming a civilization that existed as much in consciousness as in physical space. The choice of legends, the transformation of human consciousness rippled across the galaxy like a wave of possibility. In the space around Europa, reality itself held its breath as humanity faced its ultimate choice. Sarah stood at the center of it all, not as a leader, but as a focal point where the collective human consciousness could coherence. Through the shared awareness, she could feel every awakened human. The artist on Centauri Prime who painted doorways that opened to anywhere. The engineer on Titan who built machines by asking metal to reshape itself. The child on Earth who had accidentally created a playmate from pure imagination and was now teaching it to be real. But she could also feel the fear from the Coalition fleet, and they had good reason to be afraid. With their full power awakening, humans could unmake the other species with a thought, rewrite history, so that humanity had always been alone in the universe. The temptation was there, whispering in the collective unconscious. Why share the galaxy when they could have it all? That's the test. Avalon's ancient voice resonated through space. This moment, this choice. Your ancestors failed it. They chose first to dominate, then to forget. What will this generation choose? Sarah felt the weight of the decision pressing on her, but she wasn't bearing it alone. Millions of human minds touched hers, each offering their perspective. She heard the voices of parents who wanted a safe galaxy for their children, soldiers who had seen enough war, scientists who yearned to understand rather than control, artists who wanted to create beauty, not destruction. But there were other voices too. Those who wanted revenge for being lied to. Those who believed humanity deserved to rule. Those who thought the other species were parasites, feeding off humanity's forgotten legacy. The debate raged not in words, but in pure thought, faster than light, deeper than logic. Ideas clashed and merged, philosophies battled and synthesized. Through it all, Sarah held the center, preventing any one faction from overwhelming the others. Then Marcus spoke, not just to the bridge, but to the entire human consciousness. What if we're asking the wrong question? We keep asking whether we should use our power or seal it away. But what if there's a third option? Through the link, Sarah felt his idea forming. It was radical, dangerous, and absolutely brilliant. What if we share it? Marcus continued. Not our power itself, but the ability to access it. What if we give every species in the galaxy the same choice we have? The collective consciousness recoiled at first. Share their divine gift with those who had hidden the truth from them. Give godlike power to species that might use it against them. But Eva's thoughts joined Marcus's. We were always meant to be gardeners of consciousness. Our ancestors created these species, guided their evolution. What if that was just the beginning? What if we were meant to help them transcend too? The navigator added his voice. Reality is big enough for all of us to be gods. The universe is infinite. Why fight over one small galaxy when we could each create our own? Sarah felt the tide of thought shifting. The collective human consciousness was considering something unprecedented. Not domination, not isolation, but transformation on a galactic scale. She opened her eyes and faced the coalition fleet. Ambassador Kretak, Keeper Avalon, all of you, we have a proposal. Humanity will not seal away its power, nor will we use it to dominate. Instead, we offer to share it. Impossible, Kretak said immediately. Our species don't have your genetic structure. We can't access quantum consciousness the way humans can. No, Sarah agreed. But consciousness is consciousness. The method might be different, but the potential exists in every thinking being. We can teach you. We can guide your evolution as we once did, but this time as partners, not secret manipulators. Avalon's ancient ship moved closer. You would give us the power to reshape reality? The power that nearly destroyed everything? Yes, Sarah replied. But not all at once. Not without wisdom. We propose a gradual awakening for all species. Humans will serve as guides, teaching control before power, wisdom before strength. Together we'll establish protocols to prevent the chaos that destroyed our ancestors. She gestured and reality responded. Around the coalition fleet, space itself became a canvas. Sarah painted not with matter, but with possibility itself. She showed them visions of what could be. Vec hive minds that could dream entire ecosystems into being. Luminous beings that could birth stars with their thoughts. Preservers who could truly preserve, not just in memory, but by making the past perpetually present. But more than that, she showed them cooperation. Species working together to create wonders none could achieve alone. Galaxies designed like gardens. Universes nested within universes. Stories that became real simply by being told. Think of it, Sarah said. We're not offering to make you like us. We're offering to help you become the fullest version of yourselves. Each species with its own relationship to reality, its own way of creating and being. The coalition fleet was silent for a long moment. Then Kretak spoke. And if we refuse? If we choose to remain as we are? Then you remain as you are, Sarah said simply. This isn't conquest. It's an invitation. Any species that wants to stay bound by traditional reality can do so. We'll even help you establish zones where the old laws of physics remain absolute, untouched by consciousness. But know this, she continued, her voice carrying the weight of the entire human collective. Humanity has made its choice. We will not go back to sleep. We will not forget again. We are the species that dreams reality, and we're going to dream a better galaxy. You can fear us and oppose us, or you can join us and help shape that dream. Avalon's ship suddenly transformed. The ancient hull became translucent, revealing the preserver within. It was older than Sarah had imagined, a being that looked like crystallized time itself. When it spoke again, its voice held something that hadn't been there before. Hope. For 50,000 years I have guarded against humanity's return. I have enforced the quarantine, maintained the lies, kept the other species afraid of you. But I did this because I believed it was the only way to prevent another catastrophe. Now you offer something our calculations never predicted. Not conquest, not isolation, but evolution for all. The ancient being seemed to shimmer, and for a moment, Sarah could see through its crystalline form to something beneath, a consciousness so old it had witnessed the birth of galaxies, the death of countless civilizations. But also, she realized, a consciousness that had been alone for so very long. I accept your proposal, Avalon said, not because I trust humanity, but because I'm tired of being the galaxy's guardian. I'm tired of preserving a status quo built on fear. Perhaps it's time for something new. One by one, the other coalition ships began to signal their agreement. Not all of them. Some turned and fled, racing back to their homeworlds to warn of humanity's awakening. But most stayed, drawn by the promise of transcendence. Sarah felt the human collective consciousness pulse with joy and relief. They had passed the test their ancestors had failed. Instead of choosing domination or isolation, they had chosen connection. Over the following days, the transformation began. Human consciousness reached out to each willing species not to impose but to invite. The process was different for each race. The Vec, with their hive mind structure, found it easy to grasp collective consciousness but struggled with maintaining individuality within it. Humans taught them how to be many and one simultaneously. The Luminos, beings of living light, discovered they could paint with radiation itself, creating art that existed across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Their cities became symphonies of color that baseline humans could barely perceive, but awakened humans could appreciate in full. The Preservers, ancient and wise, found that their memories could become more than records. They could make the past present, creating spaces where different eras coexisted. Museums became time itself, where visitors could walk through history as a living experience. But the transformation wasn't without its challenges. On Earth, the sudden awakening of billions of humans created reality storms that threatened to tear the planet apart. Sarah and the linked consciousness had to work frantically to stabilize the competing visions of Earth's awakened population. The solution came from an unexpected source: the children. Unencumbered by preconceptions about how reality should work, they instinctively understood how to harmonize their imaginations. They taught the adults that creation didn't have to be competitive. Multiple visions could coexist in the same space, layered like transparent paintings. Marcus coordinated the establishment of reality anchors, zones where the old physics remained dominant for those who chose not to awaken or needed stability. These became refuges and training grounds, places where beings could gradually adjust to their new abilities without risking cascade failures. Eva led the medical response, though medicine itself was being redefined. When consciousness could rewrite biology, illness became a choice rather than a fate. But with that power came responsibility. She established the Healer's Covenant, principles to ensure that biological manipulation remained consensual and reversible. The Navigator worked with the awakened humans to map not just physical space but probability space. They discovered that faster-than-light travel was unnecessary when consciousness could simply decide to be elsewhere. The galaxy became both infinitely vast and intimately small. Weeks turned to months as the transformation spread. Not every world accepted the change. The Dominion of Iron, a militaristic society that valued strength above all, declared awakened space forbidden and threatened war against any who tried to infect them with consciousness manipulation. They were allowed their choice, though Sarah suspected that eventually their own people would demand the freedom to choose awakening. The real test came when humanity faced its first major crisis since awakening. A group of human supremacists calling themselves the True Inheritors attempted to use their power to rewrite reality so that humans had never created the other species. They wanted a galaxy where humanity stood alone, unchallenged and unchallenged. The collective consciousness responded not with force, but with understanding. They didn't fight the True Inheritors. Instead, they showed them every perspective simultaneously. The supremacists experienced existence through Vec compound eyes, felt the cosmos through luminous radiation sensitivity, remembered eons through preserver perception. They felt the fear their actions caused, the pain of species facing existential erasure. Most of the True Inheritors abandoned their plan, overwhelmed by empathy they couldn't escape. The few who persisted were gently isolated, their ability to affect shared reality restricted until they chose to rejoin the collective with respect for all consciousness. A year after the awakening began, Sarah stood once again on the observation deck of the Pioneer. Though the ship itself had evolved far beyond its original design, it existed partially in physical space and partially in the realm of consciousness, a vessel that could sail through dreams as easily as through vacuum. Earth floated before her, but it was not the Earth she had known. It was all Earths, every vision of the planet that its billions of inhabitants held layered into a beautiful, impossible whole. Cities of crystal floated beside forests that sang. Oceans of liquid light lapped at shores of crystallized time. And threading through it all was the consciousness of humanity, no longer hidden, no longer ashamed of its power. Marcus joined her at the viewport. "Any regrets?" he asked. Sarah considered the question. The galaxy had become stranger, more dangerous in some ways. Reality was no longer fixed. no longer reliable in the traditional sense. But it was also more beautiful, more alive, more full of possibility than ever before. "No," she said finally. "Our ancestors tried to be gods and failed. Then they tried to be ordinary and forgot who they were. We're trying something different. We're being human, fully human, with all the chaos and creativity that entails." A message reached them through the consciousness network. New species had been discovered at the galaxy's edge, ones that had never encountered humanity before. They had detected the reality fluctuations and were approaching with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Sarah smiled. Time to make new friends. Time to share the gift again. As the Pioneer began to shift through probability space toward the newcomers, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had begun with a map that showed humanity as a blank space, a void that other species feared to chart. Now humanity was writing its own legend, not as conquerors or gods, but as gardeners of consciousness, teachers of transcendence, painters of possibility. The galaxy would never be the same. Reality itself would never be the same. But then again, Sarah thought as she felt the collective consciousness of billions of humans thinking alongside her. That was the point. Humanity had finally remembered how to dream, and their dreams were becoming reality. The stars themselves seemed to pulse with anticipation as the Pioneer sailed toward the unknown, carrying with it the promise that had terrified and now uplifted the galaxy. Where the maps go blank, that's where humanity writes its legend, and the legend had only just begun.